out the details.
Steve, I want to come to you. One final comment on this, but in the context of the SBY's address this afternoon, it's it's first time for an Indonesian leader to be addressing both houses of Parliament. What would you expect from him on this issue?
Well, I think that Indonesia justifiably would be concerned about the undue pressure Australia's placing on them. They've stepped up to the plate when they've been asked, under both the Liberal Party and under the Labor Party. But really, you could understand the Indonesians being a little bit tired of this kind of rhetoric. I mean, Jason is like the Monty Python Black Knight, arms and legs lying on the ground, standing there saying, it's just a flesh wound, it's all okay.
Haven't you read Laurie Oakes lately, mate?
The reality is, and what Labor can never get past, is that since they've changed the policies, they've sent a message around the world. You, if you make it to Australia or indeed to Indonesia, will be processed in Australia, will be included and embraced in the Australian community.
Do you believe that SBY will address this today in this address to the Parliament?
Well, I'm not sure whether he'll address it in the Parliament or in the discussions that he'll have with the Prime Minister, but of course it's a very important issue. It's one of a number of important issues we want to discuss. To end on a bipartisan note, I think it's a good thing that he's here, the first Indonesian president to address a joint sitting of the Parliament. There's good work happening between the two governments, increasingly good work at a business level, but I think there's a lot more that we can achieve so that our two countries know more about each other. We probably know more about Denmark because of Princess Mary than we do about Indonesia, our next door neighbour, and that should change.
Good point, and nice to finish that area of the discussion on a bipartisan note. Let's shift focus now,
Sure.
The parental leave. Can you clarify for us, are we talking about companies that have $5 million in taxable income, or $5 million paid in tax that will have to fork out this new levy?
So Labor's, the Coalition's proposal is for companies that have $5 million in taxable income as being those that would have to pay an extra 1.7% to fund a very generous 26 weeks at real wages up to $150,000 for families, be it mothers or fathers, to help with the costs of childcare. It's a policy that goes far beyond Labor's policy. It includes, importantly, issues like superannuation. You will have your superannuation paid under the Coalition's policy. You won't under Labor's policy. You will be paid at real wage rates under the Coalition's policy. You won't under Labor's policy.
Are you worried it might provide disincentives to, for example, Lindsay Tanner was making the point yesterday that businesses that might be looking to merge and create a business with that taxable income of over $5 million might say, well, we won't do that, or that we'll split our company up so that we have separate entities paying less than $5 million.
You always hear these kind of red herrings thrown out about why something won't work. I think that if a merger and acquisition decision comes down to whether or not they're going to pay a slightly higher amount in maternity allowance or paternity allowance, I really don't think that's the basis upon which these kinds of decisions are made, and it's just a ruse from Labor. Labor has been severely outgunned on this. We're far in front of them when it comes to actually providing meaningful support for mums and dads out there, and they're embarrassed.
This is going to be a policy which is going to prove popular in many households around the country. Mothers, expectant mothers, people planning pregnancy down the track will be liking what they hear from Mr. Chobo.
Well, 3 points here, Kieran. I don't think it's going to be very popular amongst women who are working part-time or casual, who are earning below the weekly minimum wage. Under Abbott's model, they will get less than they will under ours. Andrew Bolt made a good point in the newspaper this morning where he said the poor are paying for the rich. Business will pass this on to consumers, and this scheme is designed so poor women get less and rich women get more. But here's the rub. The worst thing here is if you go and have a look at Tony Abbott's book at page 102 of Battle Lines, he says he'll compensate business for this extra cost by bringing back or getting rid of unfair dismissal laws. That will mean that 2 million more Australians... Well, read the book. I had a look at the book last night, and it says, I'll compensate business for this by getting rid of unfair dismissal laws. That'll mean 2 million Australians will be able to be sacked, even if they've done nothing wrong, even if they've been in the business for 20 years. But let me make one more point. And that is...
The book is not like, a holy book with pronouncements that he's going to choose all his policy from.
No, not necessarily. But if they're going to go down this route and say, we're going to have this paid maternity leave scheme, you need to know what's going to be the trade-off. He's also said that he'll bring back AWAs. Now, under AWAs, women who were on an AWA were $87 a week worse off than women on collective agreements. That means $4,500 a year worse off. So what he gives with one hand, he'll take with the other.
Why do the Greens like this? Why do some unions also like this, as well as small business? It's an unlikely sort of coalition of people and groups, but they're all backing it. The Greens, the unions, New South Wales, they all like what they hear.
Well, I wouldn't say that all small business like what they're seeing here. More than 3,000 businesses are going to have to pay for this. There are a lot of businesses. One was on TV last night. A small business,
750,000.
Yeah, and there are a lot of smaller businesses who will be affected by this. You used to be the shadow minister for small business until you got the sack. If you were still the shadow minister, you wouldn't have let this happen, because you know there are smaller businesses that will be affected by this.
That's completely false.
This is why. This is why.
You're completely wrong.
This is why there were so many people upset in the Liberal Party party room yesterday. This used to be the party that say they were the party of low taxes and small business. This will ensure that company tax will always be higher under the Liberal Party than the Labor Party, and it'll make sure that some small businesses will have to pay for this as a consequence.
Let's hear Steve's response.
Kieran, I'm sorry about chuckling, but it's hard to take Jason seriously. I mean, he's been offering pronouncements about what I would do. He's then offering pronouncements about what happened in the Liberal Party room. I think Labor politicians should stick to Labor Party policy. How about I actually say what I would do? Absolutely support this. The reason being because this has no impact on small business. That's negative and only has positive benefits for small business. In addition to that, you've got a situation now where you can see how desperate Labor's become. Let's start talking about the linkages between unfair dismissal and paid maternity allowance or paid paternity allowance. You know, the reality is, what's he going to trot out next? Climate change? I mean, the fact is that the two are absolutely not linked. What we're talking about here is a policy that is going to provide 26 weeks of real wages for parents to help them meet things like their mortgage expenses. Jason talks about one or two people that might be, he alleges, worse off, but he neglects to talk about all those thousands and thousands of people that would be better off under our policy. So, you know, I think that every time Labor starts going off on some tangent about unfair dismissal or climate change or whatever else they're going to dig up,
the National Independent Retailers Association expressed real concern yesterday
about what their policy differences are and why they won't step up to the plate and match our minimum commitment.
What about the business that Jason referred to on television last night? He said that he believes that he's being taxed to fund your election promise. What do you say to businesses like that who they're big employers?
Yep.
And a lot of people's jobs rely on them.
A lot of big businesses already provide some kind of framework for maternity and paternity allowance. So this potentially could be a cost saving for them, because what we'd see is, instead of having an ununiform system with all different companies offering different levels, we'll then have one uniform system which could, for many big businesses, actually provide cost savings for them. In addition to that, what you've actually got under our policy is a situation where small businesses will benefit, because they will then be able to compete in terms of maternity and paternity allowance with big business. And so that is another benefit.
That's
for
not
them.
what small business is saying. National Independent Retailers Association yesterday said these costs will be passed on. They'll be passed on to small business.
Well, the other Retailers Association, I think the bigger one, likes it.
The bottom line is, this is all about politics. This bloke a couple of years ago said that this would only happen over his dead body, and I heard, well, actually I read it in the newspaper this morning, Julie Bishop, when she was explaining this to the shadow party room, the joint party room yesterday, said the reason they're doing this is because their internal polling shows there's been a drop in support amongst women aged 25 to 40. How can you trust that they will even implement this if they were elected?
All right, well, Julie Bishop is about to join us on the program. So
ask her that question then.
I will. I'll be keen to hear what she's got to say. Jason and Steve, appreciate your time as always.
Cheers, thanks.
Stay with us after the break. Julie Bishop has just been with Tony Abbott and in talks with President Udiono, so we'll get her response on exactly what occurred, and that's straight after the break here on AM Agenda. Stay with us.